Good evening. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for making it possible for these talks to take place. Some people have told me how much they appreciate these talks. And I say, well, they wouldn't happen. I don't think they would happen if people weren't listening to them. Maybe they would. It would be a very interesting exercise to talk without recording it, giving my talk only to the objects in the room and the buildings and plants and animals beyond the room. That would be a very interesting exercise. And maybe such a talk would be the best, most transformative talk that I could ever give. But no, thank you for listening, and thank you for your feedback, and thank you for the discussion groups that we have, which sometimes find their way into these talks. One question that we can sometimes ask ourselves is, how are we to live? Or how am I to live? It's an age-old question. Most commonly asked by philosophers and people who are interested in philosophy. But more recently, it's more widespread as the planet is driven into climate change. As we make our way into what is called the sixth mass extinction. Many people are asking, how are we to live? What is the best approach to life? What is a sustainable way of life? How are we to organize our life on this planet so that it seems to be equitable and just to all the beings on the planet? And it's a good question. How are we to live? And how am I to live? With that kind of questioning, our lives are under constant review. Is this the way I want to live? Is this the way I choose to live? So rather than just barreling along like a barrel rolling down a hill, unable to see where it's going and uninterested in where it is going, just barreling down the hill. We try to look at our life in a way that will make us satisfied with it. Satisfied that we made a good go at it. Satisfied that we gave it our best shot. Satisfied that we did a good job. Satisfied. How can we be satisfied with life? Which of course brings us back to the Noble Eightfold Path. The path that leads to the end of dukkha, to the end of dissatisfaction. There's a conundrum. Can we really be not dissatisfied with the situation as it is? And what would that be like? Isn't it a good thing to be dissatisfied with the way things are? So how would it look if you remove the dissatisfaction? How would that change the way you see things? Today has been a cloudy day with occasional periods of sunshine. And this got me to think that maybe there's a sunny spell coming up. Maybe we're heading into a sunny spell. So I went and looked on the internet for the local weather forecast. And true enough, today is cloudy with some sunshine. And so is tomorrow, Sunday. Cloudy with some sunshine. And then the rest of the week is cloudy with rain. These grey skies have lasted quite a while, with occasional pockets of sunshine. So yesterday I began to think, well, I guess I just have to get used to it. Maybe this is it for the rest of the year. It has happened before. Living under a gray sky, which is either wet or dry. That seems to be the situation in which I live right now. So I told myself, get used to it. It might last a very long time. Learn to live under this gray sky. It's no big deal. It's certainly no big deal compared to living under COVID. It's no big deal compared to living under, I don't know, whatever else we're living under. Brexit, upheaval. It could be worse. A gray sky is nothing compared to war, hunger, famine. This morning, I woke up during one of those moments of sunshine. I don't know if my dream woke me up or if it was the sunshine coming in the window that woke me up. But the dream that I had was kind of sad. I woke up feeling sad. The dream was, at least the part that I remembered, that I had this wallet or folder, and in it was a bunch of cards, credit card size, but they were all white, and I don't know if they were made of plastic or paper. But as I looked through them, each card had the name of somebody that I had said goodbye to. Now, as far as I know, it was all people who had died that I had known and who had died. So if you're listening to this, you are not one of them. So I awoke feeling that was a strange dream. And I awoke feeling sad. And I tried to recall the dream as best I could, but I could really only remember that part of it. Is that what we become? names on a card in somebody's wallet. So I got out of bed and set about my morning routine, and gradually that feeling left me. But it was good to touch it from time to time during the day. Check in with that dream and the feeling that accompanied it. Dreams are interesting. Dreams are a great way to explore life, the meaning of life, to see how we behave in different scenarios, to experience the impossible, and to explore the possible. Dreams are very much like life. We find ourselves in it without having a clear perception of when it began. Sometimes we're conscious of the ending, and sometimes we're not. And dreams can change from one story to another. I can't say in the blink of an eye, but in whatever is appropriate for that. We can be on a horse one minute, galloping away from whoever is chasing us, and the next minute sitting comfortably on an airplane in the blink of an eye. And in a dream, we usually don't bat an eye when something like that happens. So the changeability of dreams, that happens in our life as well. We get a message. We get a message that somebody has died, and suddenly our plans are changed. Our trajectory is different. Or we get a message that somebody is pregnant and going to have a baby. And suddenly the future shifts. A whole new set of scenarios and stages appear before us. Or you wake up one morning and step outside and your car is not there. Or you're on a plane to Paris or London or San Francisco, and it has to be diverted because of some event, either a weather event or a ground event at the airport you're destined to, and you have to go to a different airport. or there's an earthquake, or some kind of major event. And suddenly the trajectory you had has to change, is changed. You now have a new orientation. So our waking life can be seen as a series of dreams. Each time we go from one room to the next, we go from one dream sequence to another. And when we step outside, it's a different dream sequence again. Like life, we don't have a clear perception of how it began. And in our dreams, we get to experience our karmic or volitional life as well. Maybe we get to do things that we would only dream about in our waking life. We get to make decisions sometimes in our dreams. And you know when the Dharma is penetrating your psyche, you know that is happening when it begins to manifest in your dreams. When you begin in your dreams to make ethical decisions. When you begin in your dreams to notice impermanence. When you begin in your dreams to reflect upon the teachings. Then the teachings are sinking in. And your consciousness is being transformed. As we sometimes jokingly say, but also many a truth is spoken in jest. With mindfulness, dream on. As you practice, you may notice that the difference between waking life and dreaming life seems to decrease. There seems perhaps to be an overlap. I expressed this early in my meditation career. After meditating for a few years, the way I expressed it was, before I started to meditate, life was like moving furniture around. And after meditating for a few years, it was like moving balloons around. So life became lighter by addressing the most serious questions I could apply myself to. By pursuing the path of what was most important to me, life became lighter, easier. And this is one of the benefits of practice. Our karmic life and our karmic activity is lightened. The karmic burden is lightened. So you may do something that you regret, that you think better of upon reflection. And maybe before you start to practice, it wouldn't even get that far. But there is a karmic consequence, a kind of psychic Newton's law. Newton's law in physics is that, well, there's a few of them, 2, I think, maybe 3. For every action, physical action he is talking about, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And then the second law of Newton is that any object will continue in a state of motion or rest unless an external force acts on it. We can draw comparisons with our psychic or karmic life. When you assert yourself, there will be an equal and opposite assertion from the universe. And we will continue in the direction that we're going in until something tells us to change it. So because of practice and because of the shifting in our consciousness as we reflect upon impermanence and interconnectedness, and because of our meditation and attempting to keep and follow the precepts, allowing them to inform our actions, we actually make fewer mistakes, have fewer causes of regret. And when we do make a mistake, the consequences appear to us more likely because we are less invested in the self. So it can often happen that something happens in your life which previously would have sent you into some kind of mad, frenzied state. And as a result of practicing meditation, precepts, and reflecting on the teachings, it doesn't send you into that mad, frenzied state. It's disturbing, but nothing compared to what it would have done before you started practice. I like to watch movies or what would we say, episodes. It's a great way to study karma, at least if the script is good. If the characters are congruent and consistent, and if their actions always seem to be in keeping with character. It can be a very good way to see what happens when you do this or when you do that. So lately I've been watching Breaking Bad. And it's amazing to see how the drama unfolds. Because somebody was unwilling to accept the charity of a friend to pay for his medical expenses. A chemistry teacher who was unwilling to accept what he felt a humiliation of having somebody else pay for his medical expenses. So he resorts to cooking meth, a drug which can be sold for great profit. And how one thing leads to another. How that action affects the life of him, his family, and people that he comes into contact with. Now, he's not using the drug. He's making it and working his way up a hierarchy of sellers and distributors. So it's interesting to watch what can happen when you start this kind of spiral. And it's entertaining, of course, because it's not happening to me. When you study the Dharma, it begins to inform the way you perceive things, begins to inform how you understand life. Yes, beings can suffer immensely and innocently. And that's not what we mean when we talk about karma. The animals that are dying as a result of climate change and human destruction of their habitats, they're suffering. And they did not do anything to deserve this. So that is not really what we mean by karma. There's a technical difference. Karma means action. And in particular in Buddhism, it means volitional action, what we choose to do. And the results of that action, which is usually what people mean when they talk about karma, is karma vipaka, the results of volitional action. Actions have consequences. Some actions lead to varying degrees of dukkha, dissatisfaction, disappointment, and outright anguish, suffering. And some actions lead away from that. So in Buddhism, we talk about not right and wrong, but skillful and unskillful actions. Skillful actions, they lead away from dukkha and towards the cessation of dukkha. So how are we to live? When I lived at Green Gulch in the early days of my Zen practice, I had this great insight. Well, no, it wasn't a great insight. It was a little tiny insight. It was not insight with a capital I. It was insight with a small I. It dawned on me, or I realized something. I realized that all we can do in this life, all we can do is take the next step. Whatever that may be. It may be going to the Zendo for Zazen. It may be taking a shower. It may be cooking a meal or eating a meal. It may be going for a walk, making a telephone call, whatever. The list is endless. But no matter what situation you find yourself in, all you can do is take the next step. So I said this to Norman in Dokusan. All you can do is take the next step. And he said yes. And each step informs the next step. So we may break our journey down into A, B, C, D. But when we take steps A and B, we may realize that C is no longer the appropriate step. And we really need to take F or something. So the sequence of steps that we foresee can change when we take one or two steps. Each step that we take informs the next step or shapes what the next step will be. So if you're crossing a stream and you see all the stepping stones, you may see a path that goes dit, 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 dit. But when you take one or two steps, you realize that the third one isn't actually the one you thought it was, so it changes. But this, all we can do is take the next step. And this is kind of a result from being present, or at least being a little bit more present. And that is helped by the perception or understanding that where we are going is not essentially different from where we are. That understanding, which can come about through reflection, helps us to be present and helps us to take the next step completely. Rather than half-heartedly or absent-mindedly. Our job is just to get on with our practice. Take the next step when the next step becomes apparent. When the door opens, walk through. Dogen says going forward in practice is, after all, an everyday affair. So we just get on with our daily practice, and sooner or later, the clouds will part and sunshine will come. But even if the sun were to rise in the west, our way is just to continue with our practice. Suzuki Roshi says in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. This helps us to be present. This helps us to settle into our activity and into our body and into our situation. Sooner or later, something will change. And if we are continuing with our practice, we will be able to accommodate that change and include it in our practice. And we'll be able to see the door of practice opening. Something that we may miss if we are making too much haste. This is how we are to live. To live in the present. To live in the present, being present. Being present, becoming the present. Becoming the situation that we are in. Simply taking the next step as it arises. How are we to view this life? View it as a bubble, as a dream, as a flower. It is something that arises, subsists, unfolds, and disappears. We try so hard to pin things down, to concretize them, to set them up as being permanent. No matter how hard we try, we will not succeed in that endeavor. In learning to be present and simply taking the next step, our situation becomes more fluid and perhaps even more dreamlike, less concrete. What other similarities can you find between dreams and our normal waking life? Another comparison just occurred to me. Often there is color, usually there is color and sound. And there are experiences which are either pleasant, neutral, or painful. Situations that we try to follow or pursue, and situations that we try to get away from. Perhaps some of you find yourself going to the zendo or your cushion in your sleep, in your dreams. Perhaps some of you find yourself sitting perfect, joyful, zazen in your dreams? If so, continue. With mindfulness, dream on. How are we to live? Live in such a way that no matter what happens, you're okay. You can continue to practice. That no matter what happens, you will simply take the next step. There is nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream. Practice, practice, practice until you wake up. Thank you all very much.